Many people have asked me how I create a CMF series. I inevitably end up pointing them to the video I made earlier this year about how I draw a figure, which, I'll grant, doesn't exactly answer the question. How do I make a full-on CMF series? What characters do I decide to include, and which characters don't make the cut? How do they all come together to form a series? It ain't all glamorous drawing and designing. So, with all of that required, how do I make a CMF series? Before we totally get into it, I can't take full credit for the lists in a lot of my series, actually. I've had a lot of help over the years from my Discord friends in planning and suggesting and all of that jazz, and I would like to give them the credit they deserve. But this is about me, not those dinguses. Step 1 in creating a CMF series is obviously choosing a series that you would like to make minifigures based on. This is by far the easiest step, because, come on, just choose something you like and roll with it. Can be from a movie, TV show, a full-on money-making franchise like the MCU, or even something less standard, like famous video game characters or famous musicians. Just draw what you like. Step 2 in drafting a series for me is deciding how many characters I want to include. It's tempting to go all out with slots for a full 20 different characters and flex a bit, but take a step back and think to yourself, are 20 figures really necessary? How about 16? 18? Looking back on my past series, there are definitely a few that do not require 20 figures. The biggest offender of this would be the Far From Home series from last summer. In my hubris and need to fill it up, there are definitely a bunch of fairly uninteresting characters that could have been left on the cutting floor, Dimitri, Brad, and Betty being the best examples. This series would have been improved by only being 16, probably. However, on the flip side, the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean series shows that sometimes, less is more. With a 12, accidentally 13 figure slot, every figure feels like they should be there, and it helped my overall enthusiasm to stick to a smaller number. And now, this is the most important step. Step 3, choosing your figures. This can prove far more difficult than you might guess. Your first inclination, my first inclination, is simply to include every main character of your inspiration in their most iconic looks, and then the background characters that you like the most. Sometimes, that can work out great. Gravity Falls and Comic Spider-Man work well with that approach. But oftentimes, there are things you need to consider, which you might not have thought of at first. Mainly, as the artist, what will be the best series for you and the audience you're trying to reach? As an artist, it's important to keep yourself interested in the art you're making, which isn't as simple as it sounds. And coming from experience, usually that comes down to repetitiveness. If your inspiration has many intriguing and interesting characters, but they only wear suits, is it really worth drawing a bunch of suits? Find as many unique and dynamic designs as you can when it comes to drafting a series, as the uniqueness will feel so much more rewarding in the drawing process. Would you rather draw Howard Stark or Tony Stark? Outside repetitiveness is also something to consider. There are more and more licenses pairing up with LEGO all the time, and usually that means minifigures based on those licenses. It can be frustrating when you're planning on drawing a minifigure, only to find that LEGO has already made them. This seems like an obstacle at first, but it can actually serve as a good spark of inspiration. If you find out that LEGO has made a character, maybe this is a good way to draw a different variant. Or, if you're set on making that same version, it's also a good chance to dunk on LEGO's older versions. The last thing to consider is, how cool will the series look when the characters are all together? Funnily enough, it can be a bit deflating when you've made a lot of cool figures, but the group shot silhouette is a bit boring. So do your best to plan ahead and make a group of characters that look as cool together as they do apart. With all this in mind, let's apply this to a real series. I think the best example might be my Clone Wars Series 2. So, obviously, I want to make it based on Clone Wars. Now I have to think how many I want to make. Does Clone Wars warrant a full 20 character series, even though I've already drawn one? I think it does, especially with just how many Clone Wars characters there are. So, 20 characters it is. Now, in Clone Wars, the main characters are obviously Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Rex. Unfortunately, Rex doesn't have all of that many extra variants of the character, so I think for the series, we'll have to cut him. And we've already had many official versions of these 3 characters. To set them apart from their official versions, I used Ahsoka's as of then new Siege of Mandalore outfit, and decided to dunk on LEGO by making new versions of classic Anakin and Obi-Wan. The same rules here apply to Maul, Dooku, Boba Fett, and Cad Bane, who are all either new variants or dunked on versions. To avoid the terror of repetitiveness, the only standard clone is the Ahsoka Trooper. Every other clone character has very unique armor or a very unique look. The Bad Batch, Heavy, and 99 are all quite different, and thus very fun to draw. And since they're very popular characters, they would fit into this series nicely. That brings us up to 14 characters already. New characters that look incredibly interesting could be people like the Force Trio, who will really help the silhouette. Jedi Tipley as well would certainly help with that, and the Jedi Temple Guard might work as well. The only characters that I say are filling the slot would be Saw Gerrera and Lux Bonteri. They are important characters, but maybe not that important. Maybe it should have been 18. And really, once you finish the series and look back on it, don't be afraid to notice the mistakes and give yourself some critiques. That's how you'll be able to go back, improve your work, and get that much closer to finding the perfect formula. But, now that you have all of the characters listed out, you can finally start to draw them. And once you see them all together in a completed silhouette, you'll probably be pretty proud. They came out quite nice, didn't they? And with that, that is my process for how I draft a CMF series. So hopefully you can see that it's not just drawing and designing. There's a lot of work that you don't see, but work that I still enjoy all the same. Hopefully this can help you on your own way, knowing the best way to go about working in the incredibly niche world of CMF series. And I also encourage you to find your own process, because, honestly, sometimes I don't even follow my own and I just fly by the seat of my pants. But I wish you luck, and until next time, later.